Okay, good morning. I hope you had a nice weekend, you got some rest and didn't get sick like many others. So I see that we do have quorum, and I would like to start by inviting the Secretary to make some housekeeping announcements.
Good morning, everyone. Please be reminded that the deadline for the submission of all in-session documents is 6 p.m. today. So any documents submitted after this time may not be available for discussion in the committee before the plenary session. So I urge everyone to please cooperate and collaborate during the working group sessions that are left so that we can have final com docs for discussion in the committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So today, before we start the proceedings, I would like to say we have several more summary records. So it's Sum Rec 8, 9, and 10. I will be looking at them at 2 o'clock. So when we start the afternoon session, I will take them up and see if there are any changes, amendments to be made. Then we also have the CoP20 document on Boswellia. It's been posted early this morning, so I will also look at this document this afternoon when we start at 2 o'clock. So these are documents we will be looking at quite right at the start of the afternoon session. Now, for this morning, I want to go back to the two elephant issues we had left off unfinished on Saturday. As much as I heard, there has been quite some work being done on that matter, and I would like to give the floor to Zimbabwe. Especially, first I would like to look at the nomenclature issue, so CoP20 Doc 113, the first issue we have to look at, which is how will the change in taxonomy of the African elephant be reflected in the appendices? We had these three options, A, B, and C. We didn't have agreement on that. We had a split in the room, and I asked Africa to go back and look at this issue again. And now I would give the floor to Zimbabwe to tell us what has happened this weekend. So, Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to relook and reflect on the issue of nomenclature of the African elephant. Chair, we met yesterday. We had a 6-hour session to discuss two issues, and we first began with the nomenclature issues. After convoluted discussions between the options A and B, we ended up having consensus on amended option C. And if you allow, I may read, including the proposed amendment. Therefore, the amended option C would read in the first column, Appendix 1, Elephas maximus, Loxodonta spp, and in brackets, except the populations of L. africana of Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, which are included in Appendix II, subject to Annotation A10. And then in the second column, Appendix II, Loxodonta africana, A10, in brackets, only the populations of Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, comma, all other populations are included in Appendix 1.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. Can you please read out the change in Appendix 1?
Appendix 1 would read, Elephas maximus, Loxodonta spp, and in brackets, except the populations of L. africana of Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, comma, which are included in Appendix II, subject to Annotation A10.
Thank you very much. So I would like now open the floor to parties in the room. If they can agree on that way forward, that would be great so that we can solve that issue quite quickly. I have South Africa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'd like to thank you also for allowing Africa to meet on this particular issue, and thank the Chair of the Africa Group for convening the meeting yesterday. And for the benefit of the parties, her first name is Patience. And her patience was really tested yesterday because we had a marathon session of 6 hours on just 2 items. But I would just like to concur with what she has said and support the consensus proposal that she has placed before the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. I have Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. We did have a 6-hour marathon yesterday, and I would like to confirm that what Zimbabwe has presented is what was agreed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. Like the speakers before me, I'd like to concur that we support the option presented by the chairperson as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. We rise to confirm the option submitted by Zimbabwe with those modifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Botswana. Nigeria.
Thank you, Chair. Nigeria confirmed the consensus agreement of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Lesotho, then I think I have heard quite a lot of agreement. Lesotho, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm that this is the agreement in the African group as presented. Thank you.
So thank you very much. So I take it then that Committee 1 agrees on that option C star as read out by Zimbabwe, which would have then Appendix 1 listing B Elephas maximus loxodonta spp, except the populations of L. africana of Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, which are included in Appendix 2, subject to Annotation A10. And in Appendix 2, it would read as it is now. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for your patience, and especially patience for having so much patience to have an agreement, and I think this is a very good way forward. Thank you very much. We still have to decide on questions on some decisions. We have draft decisions on data collection and analysis of 2 species of African elephants in Annex 1 to the document. So I would like to open the floor for any comments on these draft decisions in Annex 1. Seeing nobody asking for the floor, I think we can accept these decisions as contained in Annex 1. We also have proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 1010, Ref CoP 19 on trade in elephant specimens contained in Annex 2 to the document. So I open the floor for comments on these amendments to resolution, which you can see in Annex 2. Seeing nobody asking for the floor, I think we can agree on these amendments to Resolution Conf 10 as in Annex 2 of the document. And then also, if you agree on the deletion, if you accept the deletion of decisions 19275 to 19277. So thank you very much. So this is agreed as well. So I now would turn to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 14 on Loxodonta, proposal 14 on Loxodonta africana, the African elephant. We also had this discussion on the proposed changes to annotation A10, and I think also this matter has been looked at in your marathon session yesterday. So I would give the floor to Zimbabwe to tell us what you decided upon. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor again to give feedback on our deliberations as Africa Group. We considered proposal 14 as an outcome of the dialogue meeting, which was held in Botswana last year, and with the assistance of two key resource persons, the nomenclature specialist, Peter Paul, and also Dr. Beno Kita, the co-chair of the African Elephant Specialist Group. We managed to look at the proposed amendments of annotation A10, and we agreed on the following. Paragraph F, after all the deliberations, there will be no changes to paragraph F, which means that it will just read, trade in individually marked and certified equipas incorporated in finished jewelry for non-commercial purposes for Namibia and Zimbabwe, for non-commercial purposes and ivory carvings for both Namibia and Zimbabwe. Therefore, there is no material change to paragraph F. We also considered the suggestions that had been made by Niger with regards to paragraph B, and we agreed, we had consensus on the need to avoid including resolutions in an annotation. So it would remain as per the proposed amendment as submitted in the current proposal. Chair, we also made consideration to some of the proposed amendment on page 5, the last para, which reads, all other specimens shall be deemed to be specimens of species included in Appendix 1, and the trading then shall be regulated accordingly. After further reflections on the proposed amendment of the parts and derivatives, it was agreed that that amendment would reduce the scope of the definition of specimens under CITES. Therefore, it would remain as such. Chair, we also took into consideration some amendments which had been suggested by the government of Japan with reference to paragraph G, and the parties rejected those proposed amendments. And we also reflected on the suggestions that were made by the United States at our last session, and there were no objections. There was consensus and agreement on those proposed amendments as they are just bringing clarity to the text. This is our submission, and I'm glad to inform you that Africa now has consensus on this, and we request other parties to support this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your hard work on this one. So let me quickly check with the Secretariat if we now have all the changes together so that I can read them out, so that we then have agreement on them. And I will then put them to the floor, of course, first. United States, I don't quite remember what your suggested amendments were that were agreed on by the Africa group. So can you please read them out again so that I have a sense what they are?
Yes, Chair. The first one would be there is an "and" missing after little e as a consequence of the proposed deletion of little g and little h. Second, for the same reason, there is a period missing at the end of little f to replace the semicolon. And third, the period should not be deleted at the end of the second to last sentence of the annotation. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so we have now annotation A10 for the exclusive purpose of allowing A remains as it has been, B remains as it has been proposed, so it reads trade in live animals to appropriate and acceptable destinations. Then E is trade in leather goods. It remains as it has been proposed, and at the end we add "and." And then in F, it would read trade in individually marked and certified equipas incorporated in finished jewelry for non-commercial purposes for Namibia and ivory carvings for non-commercial purposes for Zimbabwe. Full stop. And then at the end, the rest of the two last paragraphs, they remain as they have been proposed. At the end of the first, there is a full stop. Okay, I see Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je suis désolé de revenir sur ce que le Zimbabwe a dit par rapport au consensus d'hier, mais ce n'est pas ça qui a été retenu comme consensus. Pour le dernier paragraphe, le consensus portait qu'on enlève les spécimens pour mettre tous les autres parties et produits dérivés. Le consensus a porté sur ça. Et je pense que les délégués qui étaient sur place ont mis leur accord sur ce consensus-là. Je vois mal maintenant le Zimbabwe reprendre la parole pour escamoter un peu ce qui a été convenu hier. Hier, on a demandé à ce que les pays de la SADC, de l'Afrique australe, pour enlever par exemple la définition, de dire qu'ils se réfèrent, destination appropriée, acceptable, se réfèrent à la définition, à la résolution. Et on avait dit que cet engagement-là devrait figurer dans le compte-rendu de la COP. Ensuite, l'autre consensus a porté sur le dernier paragraphe. On a enlevé le spécimen pour mettre tous les autres parties et produits dérivés. Le consensus a porté sur ça. S'ils reviennent sur ce consensus, il n'y a plus de consensus sur ce document proposition 14. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Senegal. I have Niger.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Et effectivement, à la sortie du consensus, le Niger est un pays qui avait fait les propositions d'amendement. C'est entendu avec la réunion du groupe que le paragraphe B, tel que l'a notifié tout à l'heure mon collègue du Sénégal, que le paragraphe B reste inchangé, mais que cela fasse l'objet d'une déclaration formelle par les pays propositeurs de la proposition 14 et que ça soit versé dans le compte rendu de la COP. Donc nous nous sommes entendus qu'on retire notre proposition d'amendement et que ça reste inchangé, mais que les pays auteurs de la proposition fassent une déclaration en plénière, formelle, qu'ils se réfèrent à la définition telle que consignée dans la résolution CONF 11.20. Pour ce qui est du dernier paragraphe, je soutiens effectivement ce que vient de dire mon collègue du Sénégal. Il a été convenu lors de la réunion que on remplace les spécimens par tout produit et dérivé, et cela a été accepté même par les pays propositeurs de la présente proposition. Donc, en tout cas, notre vœu est que cela soit respecté tel que nous l'avons discuté en groupe et que ça a été consensuel. Merci bien, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Niger. I give the floor to Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, what Senegal and Niger are mentioning with regards to Resolution CONF 1120 in its original state, Resolution CONF 1120 in its original state, that was the understanding or the agreed consensus understanding that we had when clarity was being requested as to what do we mean or what are we referring to in B when the term appropriate and acceptable destination is appearing. And we made it clear, and there was a general agreement that in this context, in paragraph B, the term appropriate and acceptable destination is as per original Resolution CONF 1120. And then I will go to the issue of the last para on page 5 of the proposal. It is true what Senegal and Niger have said with regards to the submission, but at the end of our deliberation, there was a definition of specimen which was read out by Botswana, which is very broad and the word specimens, that was the way it was explained. It included parts and derivatives and also live specimen. It included everything, and perhaps something might have been lost in translation. I asked the group back to say, now given this definition of specimen, which is very broad to include everything, do we want to reduce the scope of that statement by only limiting it to parts and derivatives so that it reads, all other parts and derivatives shall be deemed to be specimens of species included in Appendix 1, and the trading then shall be regulated accordingly? I thought with the definition of specimen that had been shared, I thought there was a consensus in the room that the intention was not to reduce the application of what this paragraph is meant to or is intended to achieve. So I thought that it would remain unchanged. But if parties so wish, as submitted by Niger, to say parts and derivatives, which would reduce the scope of this paragraph, that is up to the committee to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I have Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Moi, ce qui me gêne dans cette affaire, c'est qu'on a eu un consensus sur cette affaire-là. Vous avez voulu réouvrir le débat sur la définition du spécimen. Et on vous a dit, le consensus a été acté, on n'y revient plus. Et vous revenez ici pour dire que, voilà, on a commencé à faire des définitions. Ce n'était pas ça. Je suis désolé. On avait un consensus, tout le monde était d'accord. Et vous avez, à la fin de la réunion, voulu réouvrir un débat. On vous a dit que non, le débat est clos, il y a eu consensus sur ce document, on lève la séance. Ce matin, vous avez parlé des options. Il faut toujours traduire fidèlement ce qui a été dit dans nos réunions. Dans nos réunions, hier, pour les options A, B, C, le Sénégal et la Guinée-Bissau étaient pour l'option B. Ici, vous ne l'avez pas dit. Nous n'avons pas voulu rompre le consensus, c'est pourquoi on n'a pas intervenu sur ce point-là. Mais quand vous faites le compte-rendu de nos réunions, dites ce qui a été dit, qu'il y a des pays qui étaient pour l'option C amendée et d'autres qui ont été pour l'option B. C'est ça la fidélité. Et ici même, on ne va pas réouvrir le débat sur les spécimens puisque l'Afrique, réunie hier pendant 6 heures de temps, a eu un consensus sur ce document. Et nous ne dérogerons pas sur ça parce que c'était un consensus. Vous ne pouvez pas revenir ici pour reposer le problème, pour essayer de dire qu'on réduit ou non la portée. C'est ce qui a été décidé par le groupe africain et c'est ce qu'on va retenir. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. I have Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your patience with the Africa group. I wanted to confirm that what was discussed yesterday and what was agreed is as read out by Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. The Africa Group had a continuous 6-hour session. We had a lot of discussions, and we eventually concluded, and the agreement was that we come into a compromise position with respect to the taxonomy, with the listing of the species, and that's why we went for a compromised option, which was option C with amendments, and I think that one has already been cleared. Regarding the annotation, regarding the paragraph B, we agreed that we'll go with the statement in B that ends at appropriate and acceptable destination, on the understanding that the countries with the populations under this annotation will make a statement that the understanding of appropriate and acceptable destination is as per the resolution CONF 11.20, and so that should be reflected in the summary records of this discussion. The last part, we had not agreed on the concept, or we not agreed on what would be the text, the last paragraph, on whether to use the words parts and derivatives, but it was the wish of majority of, it was the wish of some of the parties that we have that reflected, and the statement reads, or other parts and derivatives will be specimens of, considered to be specimens of Appendix I. So with that, I think the statement made by Zimbabwe that it's optional. We can go either way, but it is clear that we did not have a full consensus on the last paragraph. But again, as Zimbabwe has said, if the parties, because again, we acknowledge that although we are meeting as Africa region, the decision has to be taken by the COP. We were just a region, but now it's upon the COP to agree. But generally, we were looking at those statements, those two options, whether to leave that paragraph as it is, considering that in the text of the convention, the term specimen is defined. But for purposes, the context of the annotation A10, Kenya would have gone with the option of changing that to parts and derivatives. But out of, with the need to come into a consensus, we would agree with either way, depending on what the COP decides. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I will give the floor to Niger and Benin, and then I would like to turn to non-African states to provide me with their views, because there does not seem to be agreement on whether in the last paragraph of this annotation we have all other specimens shall be deemed, or we have all other parts and derivatives shall be deemed to be specimens. So I will have to get some opinion on this one from other parties than Africa. So I have Niger.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Le Niger, c'est pas de notre vœu, ou bien c'était pas tel que nous l'avons pensé ce matin, traiter ou bien rouvrir ce dossier. Nous pensons qu'on allait juste faire le retour du consensus fidèlement et honnêtement, et nous allons passer donc à d'autres propositions de l'agenda à votre honneur. Mais très malheureusement, nous voyons que ça est en train de prendre une tendance, malgré que nous avons eu des consensus auxquels plusieurs États étaient présents à cette réunion. Nous ne sommes pas restés fixes, nous avons été flexibles, et nous avons accepté, en tout cas pour qu'il y ait compromis. Tout ce que nous souhaiterons, c'est que ce compromis soit fidèle à ce que nous avons traité en réunion du groupe de travail et en réunion du groupe Afrique. Je ne sais pas pourquoi on veut encore modifier ce qui a été dit en groupe. Tout ce que nous demandons, nous sommes d'accord de retirer ce que nous avons initialement proposé, et que ça fasse l'objet d'une déclaration, c'est très simple, et que le dernier paragraphe, ça a été accepté en plénière lors de la réunion en groupe, qu'on va remplacer spécimen par produits et autres produits et dérivés. Donc je ne vois pas maintenant pourquoi on doit encore vous fatiguer avec ça. Donc je pense bien que soyons fidèles aux conclusions de la réunion de consensus, et nous allons vaquer à d'autres documents de travail. Merci bien, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Niger. I also would like to have that finished quite quickly, so I call on parties to be flexible there. I have Benin.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Bénin a eu la chance de participer à cette réunion et aux conclusions auxquelles nous sommes parvenus. S'agissant, je ne voudrais pas revenir sur les débats qui ont déjà eu lieu sur le document 113. Nous sommes parvenus à un consensus sur l'option C amendée. Sur la proposition 14, par rapport au paragraphe B, ce qui a été dit et qui est parvenu effectivement au consensus, c'est que le Niger retire sa proposition d'amendement, mais que cela puisse clairement apparaître que toutes les parties de l'aide de répartition conviennent que c'est la définition dans la résolution qui a été mentionnée par le Zimbabwe, c'est à cette définition qu'on fait référence. Par rapport à la question du spécimen, je voudrais confirmer ici haut et fort qu'on a vraiment eu un consensus sur remplacer spécimen par toute partie ou produit dérivé. Et tel que le Sénégal l'a mentionné, lorsqu'on a voulu réouvrir le débat après la proposition du Botswana, il s'est levé en séance pour demander à ce qu'on n'ouvre plus à nouveau, parce qu'il y avait déjà eu un consensus. Donc je suis parfaitement d'accord que nous puissions restituer ce sur quoi nous nous sommes convenus, parce que sur cette partie, nous avions déjà longuement discuté en présence des autorités. Cette réunion a duré plus de 6 heures, et à la fin, nous nous étions convenus. Donc quand on a voulu, après la définition lue par le Botswana, réouvrir l'intervention, il s'est levé en plénière pour demander à ce qu'on ne continue plus. Et je pense qu'à la suite de son intervention, nous n'avons plus poursuivi le débat. Donc je voudrais que de façon fidèle, nous puissions dire que nous avons déjà obtenu un consensus sur cette question, parce qu'il n'y a pas eu de discussion supplémentaire. Et je pense que la preuve, la présidente de Zimbabwe l'a reconnu. Et on n'a plus, en réalité, peut-être qu'il n'y avait pas eu une compréhension vers la fin, et c'est normal, c'était 6 heures de réunion. Donc sur la fin, on n'avait plus voulu poursuivre les débats sur cette question, sur cette définition, et nous nous étions convenus sur ce consensus. Donc je pense que, de façon résumée, sur la proposition, sur le document 113, le consensus est sur le C amendé. Sur le document 14, la partie B, avec le retrait de l'amendement du Niger, et avec la reconnaissance par toutes les parties de l'aide de répartition que on fait référence à la définition dans la résolution. Et au niveau de spécimen, on mettrait toute partie et produits dérivés. C'est ce sur quoi nous nous sommes convenus, si je ne me trompe. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Benin. South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. In our discussions after the 6-hour-long marathon session, there was quite a bit of uncertainty around the definition of specimen versus parts and derivatives. We looked at the convention text, and the definition of specimen is all-inclusive. It includes parts and derivatives and whole animals, etc. So we decided, well, some of us seemed to decide that a specimen would be better because that was the terminology used in the convention. It means something particular. And it seems as though if we go for parts and derivatives, we'd be increasing the scope of our proposal. Because what it would mean is that only parts and derivatives would be included on Appendix 1, and the rest that would be left in the Appendix 2 annotation. So perhaps we could do here with a bit of clarity from the Secretariat. It seems more of a matter of wording, language, and the legal definition of specimen. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. I will go back to the Secretariat on that one, but I want to hear first from Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, it is correct, Chair, that Botswana did raise that point towards the end of the meeting, simply because that is the way the matter has been couched currently in the annotation. We are, of course, amenable to hear what the view of the Secretariat on this matter, because we would certainly like to bring the matter to a conclusion, because we do believe that consensus was reached on this particular amendment and that it would be in the interest of the parties to move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Give me a minute and I will come back. Okay, we have tried to understand the issue really, and the Secretariat will now explain what, in their view, the reduction of specimens to all parts and derivatives would mean in practice, because I think it's critical to understand if we have this terminology in the annotation. We have to understand what this would mean in practice then. So I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Chair. In accordance with Article 1 of the Convention, little b, specimens are defined as included, little I, any animal or plant, whether alive or dead, and little double I, in the case of an animal, for species included in Appendices 1 and 2, any readily recognizable part or derivative. So in the context of this conversation, the option of choosing to include the word specimen would mean that live elephants and or parts and derivatives would retain Appendix 1 status, whereas if the choice is made to move with only the mention of parts and derivatives, the live specimen of elephants would remain under Article 4 of the Convention. So live specimen would be considered as Appendix 2 status, whereas parts and derivatives, if we use those words, would be under regulation as Appendix 1 specimen. So the definition, the difference is, if we use the word specimen, any live elephant or part or derivatives falls under Appendix 1 status. If we use parts and derivatives only, the live elephants then de facto become Appendix 2 status. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretary. I think with this explanation, I would like to turn to Senegal and Niger. Do you really want to have that change done? Because I think that's not in what you really want to have happening. So I think if you have specimen, you are assured that all other specimens, including live elephants, will be treated as Appendix 1. If you have parts and derivatives, then live elephants will be treated as Appendix 2, and I don't think that's in your interest. So I would really like to go back to Niger and Senegal to ask them if that's what their intention is, because if it is not, then please reflect on that. Senegal, you have the floor.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, moi, c'est un peu ce qui m'a un peu gêné, c'est par rapport aux discussions d'hier, et ils nous ont amené des spécialistes. La moindre des choses, c'était que quand on a un consensus sur ça, avant d'y revenir, qu'on en discute. Et revenir ici pour dire qu'on n'avait pas un consensus, c'est ça surtout le problème. Pas, par exemple, utiliser spécimen ou partie ou produit, c'était pas ça le problème. Maintenant, donnez-nous un instant pour réfléchir 2 secondes avant de vous revenir.
Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that. Senegal, have you come to a conclusion? I would like to proceed as quickly as possible. Senegal, you have the floor.
Parce que ma compréhension était que quand on utilise les spécimens, on a la possibilité de contourner et d'envoyer des éléphants vivants hors de l'Afrique. Je demande au secrétariat, est-ce qu'il y a cette possibilité-là par rapport à la définition qui a été donnée? Parce qu'on nous a dit que des éléphants ont été envoyés hors de l'Afrique sur la base de ce dernier paragraphe-là. Parce que c'est des spécimens vivants ou non. Donc, ce que vous dites là, il faut que ça soit clair. Le secrétariat, je vous demande d'éclaircir vraiment ce que vous avez dit tout à l'heure par rapport à la possibilité d'envoyer des éléphants à partir de ce paragraphe-là hors de l'Afrique.
C'est bien clair.
Secretary, please.
Thank you, Chair. To answer the question from Senegal, trade in live elephants would be allowed if we use the term specimen. The difference is that if you use the term specimen, live elephants would be included under Appendix I regulation. So any trade in live elephants would have to comply with the conditions of Article 3 of the Convention requiring export and import permit. If the terms used are parts and derivatives, as explained before, live elephants would fall under Appendix II status. So trade in live elephants would be conducted under Article 4 and would require only an export permit but no import permit. So in both cases, trade in live elephants is possible, but by using the term specimen, it falls under Article 3 of the Convention because of the Appendix I status, and the trade measures are stricter because an import permit is necessary to conduct the trade. Thank you.
So Senegal, what is your conclusion? Senegal, you have the floor.
Oui, c'est vrai que vous dites que dans les deux cas, il y a possibilité de transfert d'éléphants vivants hors de l'Afrique. C'est un peu ça qu'on voulait empêcher en proposant cette modification-là. Maintenant, si le terme spécimen utilisé est plus restrictif que le terme partie, on peut concéder ça par rapport aux explications données par le secrétariat.
Thank you very much, Senegal. So in that case, we would remain in the last paragraph, we would leave it with all other specimens shall be deemed to be specimens of species included in Appendix I, and the trade in them shall be regulated accordingly. Okay, Zimbabwe, did you still want to take the floor? I think we have now agreement on that last paragraph. Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to clarify, I checked with the countries that must implement this legally binding annotation. They were saying they were not actually opposed to what Senegal and Niger were saying, but we felt, and also in my opinion as Chair, that what Senegal and Niger were actually proposing is actually the opposite of what they wanted. But if they insisted, they were saying actually what Senegal and Niger are saying is actually favorable for those populations in Appendix II. So either way, they would accept whatever the committee decides. Thank you.
Okay, now I put it to all other parties. I think we have agreement that that last paragraph reads as all other specimens shall be deemed to be specimens of species included in Appendix I, and the trade in them shall be regulated accordingly. If you do not agree with this proposed way forward, please tell me so. Okay, so we have agreed on that change and also the other changes as I read them out before. And I think we can close the debate on that matter. So it is adopt this annotation A10, proposal 14 is accepted by consensus with the amendments made by the Africa Group and the United States. I see Kenya. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As we conclude this, Chair, we would like to request if you can read again what has been agreed on paragraph F. If you could kindly read.
Okay, my understanding was that paragraph F reads, trade for non-commercial purposes in individually marked and certified equipas incorporated in finished jewelry, for non-commercial purposes for Namibia, and ivory carvings for non-commercial purposes for Zimbabwe. But I realize it's a lot of non-commercial purposes. I think I have to change that. Just a moment.
Just keep it there.
Okay, so it's just the original text as it was before. So trade in individually marked and certified equipas incorporated in finished jewelry for non-commercial purposes for Namibia, and ivory carvings for non-commercial purposes for Zimbabwe. I see Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. We wanted that clarification. The consensus in the meeting was that we revert to the very original text as adopted in when the four populations of elephants were first placed under this annotation. Thank you. So now it's clear.
Okay, so now it's clear to everyone, and that I don't think I have to repeat it, and this closes this agenda item. Thank you very much. Now I would start with the proposals to amend the appendices that had been pushed back at the request of South Africa, and now I'll give the floor to South Africa to introduce CoP20 Proposal 1 on Damaliscus pigargus, the Bontebok. It's to delete this species from Appendix II. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members of all the parties, and thank you once again for acceding that this item will be presented at a later date than the date that was set. South Africa is pleased to present Proposal 1 to delete the Bontebok from Appendix 2 of CITES, as it no longer meets the criteria for inclusion in Appendix 2. This is a conservation success story for South Africa and the CITES Convention, I might add. Bontebok was first listed in Appendix 1 of CITES in 1975, when the population was very small. In 1981, it was transferred to Appendix 2 as the population showed signs of recovery. Thanks to the dedicated efforts of local farmers, the private wildlife industry, and conservation authorities in South Africa, the Bontebok has made a remarkable recovery from only 17 animals in the 1930s to a population size of around 10,000 today. An NDF conducted by South Africa's Scientific Authority concluded that local and international trade in live animals and the export of hunting trophies now poses a low risk to the survival of Bontebok. We have found that overregulation of trade in hunting trophies in recent years is driving landowners to favor blesbok, the more common sister subspecies of Damaliscus pigargus. This is evident in the auction prices of Bontebok, which dropped in 2017 from a prior value of $5,000 to less than $2,000, and then declined further to around $300 today. It is anticipated that deleting Bontebok from CITES Appendix 2 will lead to an increase in the financial value of Bontebok. This will incentivize landowners to make more land available for the conservation of Bontebok, which will be of particular importance within its natural distribution range, where competing land use for agriculture and urban expansion is substantial. Chairperson, in summary, we propose it is now time to delete the South African endemic Damaliscus pigargus from the CITES appendices. CITES has served its purpose, and Bontebok is no longer threatened by international trade. Its deletion will result in an improved conservation status. The current threats to Bontebok, including population fragmentation, low genetic diversity, and risk of hybridization, which are all beyond the remit of CITES, will be managed through a biodiversity management plan, provincial and industry DNA-based protocols, and a nationally approved metapopulation management framework for large mammal species as presented in information document CoP20 Inf 55. I humbly request that parties support this proposal. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, South Africa. I now open the floor to parties. I see Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe is in support of the proposal by South Africa to delete Bontebok from Appendix 2 listed as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Namibia.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Namibia fully supports South Africa's proposal to delete the Bontebok from Appendix II. This subspecies is a clear conservation success. From just 17 animals in the 1930s to nearly 10,000 today, with no evidence of illegal trade and strong national management in place. The Bontebok no longer meets the biological or trade criteria for Appendix II, and continued listing only adds unnecessary administrative burden without contributing to conservation. Deleting the Bontebok will strengthen incentives for private and community custodians who have driven this remarkable recovery. Namibia urges parties to support this proposal. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Namibia. I have now European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We support the proposal to remove Damaliscus pygargus from the CITES appendices, as the species no longer meets the criteria for Appendix II. International trade in the species, which is almost solely in hunting trophies, constituting an average of 120 individuals per year, is not considered a threat to the species. South Africa seems to have sufficient precautionary measures in place in accordance with Annex 4 of ResConf 924 to ensure continued control and monitoring of the population, trade, and mitigation of threats. Continuing threats to the species are habitat limitations and hybridization. These threats cannot be solved by CITES. That said, we strongly encourage South Africa to continue mapping the genetics of individuals, as it remains unclear how large a proportion of the population, both in the natural distribution range and outside, are pure individuals and how many are hybrids. Further action to prevent hybridization is necessary, including the development of a meta-population management plan, which should be a priority for South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. I have Lesotho.
Thank you, Chair. Lesotho would like to applaud South Africa for their significant efforts in conserving this endemic species and resulting in a significant increase in the population, and therefore we support their proposal to delete this species from CITES Appendix II. Thank you, Chair. We strongly support.
Thank you. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We congratulate South Africa for its management of the Bontebok, which has resulted in the growth and recovery of the subspecies. We note that these management measures appear likely to continue irrespective of whether the species is listed on the CITES appendices. We agree with the assessment that the species no longer meets the criteria for listing in Appendix II and believe that the precautionary measures in Annex 4 of Resolution 9.24 have been satisfied and therefore can support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. Eswatini would like to congratulate South Africa for this proposal. And more particularly, Eswatini would like to recognize that this is an endemic species to South Africa, being its only range state. And we are keen that range states do lead the future of the species under their protection. So we fully support South Africa's position here. We do believe that the criteria for listing are no longer valid, and that a downlisting will add value for communities and custodians alike and ensure its future protection of the species. Precautionary measures appear to be in place, and we believe that the continued population trajectory, as has been over the last few years, will continue. So we urge support for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanzania.
Thank you, Chair. United Republic of Tanzania echo the compliments that has been raised by parties to commend the good work that the Republic of South Africa is doing in the conservation of Bontebok. Tanzania support the deletion of the species from the Appendix II listing because it does not meet the listing criteria. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana congratulates South Africa to rescue the Bontebok from near extinction. We support the proposal to delist the species. I thank you.
Thank you. Mozambique.
Thank you, Chair. Mozambique would also like to join the other parts and commend South Africa for the efforts done in recovering Bontebok, and we support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now close the speaker list. I have Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to commend South Africa for its remarkable success in the Bontebok conservation. We support this proposal for the following three reasons. First, population size of Bontebok has significantly increased as a result of the dedicated efforts of its sovereign state, South Africa. Second, after the species is removed from Appendix II, conservation measures will continue under national legislation and in line with the national guidance for the metapopulation management of large mammal species as referred in Information Document Doc 55. Therefore, we consider the likelihood of the species being relisted in Appendix II in the near future to be very low. Third, majority of the Bontebok inhabits private land. Allowing international trade in hunting trophies will incentivize private landowners to actively participate in Bontebok conservation, thereby promoting both conservation and sustainable use of this species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Japan. I have Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada echoes other parties and agrees that the Bontebok no longer meets the biological criteria for CITES Appendix II listing. Thank you.
Thank you. Malawi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Malawi would like to join other parties who are supporting the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mexico.
Gracias, señor presidente. México se une a las felicitaciones a Sudáfrica por este ejemplo de éxito en el manejo, conservación y uso sustentable de una especie CITES y apoya la propuesta. Gracias.
Thank you. And lastly, Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Zambia would also like to join other parties in supporting the proposal to delete the species. And congratulations to South Africa for your job well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I open now the floor for two interventions from AGOs, NGOs. I have Provide Life.
Thank you, Chair. I'm making this intervention on behalf of 9 observer organizations. We do not support deletion of the Bontebok from the appendices, as we believe continued regulation of international trade is required to ensure that offtakes are non-detrimental. According to the IUCN Red List, this endemic subspecies is vulnerable. It has a very restricted natural range, limited to southern parts in South Africa's Western Cape region, with highly fragmented and small populations. Low genetic diversity, inbreeding depression, and hybridization with blessbok pose major threats to the subspecies. It is in regular trade with gross exports of 2,305 trophies and 35 live specimens since 2010. South Africa's own draft non-detriment finding for Bontebok, published in 2024, clearly documents threats to the subspecies and, importantly, weaknesses in the management and regulation of offtakes. According to the draft NDF, the population in the natural range is only 2,500 animals, while the vast majority of the population is living outside of the species' natural range, on private land, being intensely managed on hunting farms, and according to IUCN, this majority of the population has limited to no conservation value. The draft NDF also states, and I quote, "There is no national hunting quota and no restrictions on harvesting to prevent overuse are currently in place. Also, there is a concern that there is a net flow of individuals away from the natural range and that at a national level harvesting is monitored through the CITES exports. Therefore, we cannot support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Wildlife Ranching South Africa. Then I will conclude.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. I congratulate all the parties who supported this proposal and note that not a single party opposed this proposal. This is a huge endorsement for the convention. The Bontebok is an endemic species found only in South Africa, confined to a limited natural range within the Fynbos biome. The population has now reached ecological saturation, with 75% of the animals occurring outside the natural distribution range, proving that habitat capacity, not trade, is the limiting factor. As stated by our Honourable Deputy Minister, South Africa's proposal to delete the Bontebok from Appendix II reflects one of the greatest conservation success stories in this convention's history, boasting a recovery of nearly 60,000%. This success is achieved through rigorous protection, habitat management, and sustainable use. Clearly shows that the Bontebok no longer meets the biological or trade criteria for Appendix II listing. As suggested by the fellow NGO that spoke prior to this intervention, if parties were to follow this guidance and vote against this proposal, they would be failing CITES on multiple fundamental levels. Firstly, the science is clear. The Bontebok is not threatened by international trade and does not qualify for Appendix II under the Convention criteria. Secondly, the trade data is clear. There is no illicit international trade and not a single instance of illegal offtake recorded within its range. And thirdly, the Secretariat has reviewed this data and recommended the adoption of this proposal, recognizing that all the criteria for the safety listing of the species have been met. To not recognize and support this proposal would be nothing short of a rejection of the very core principles on which CITES was founded. It would be an insult to the sovereign rights of the range states. The preamble of the convention, signed on the 3rd of March 1973 in Washington, D.C., reminds us that CITES recognizes that peoples and states are and should be best protectors of their own wild fauna and flora. South Africa has demonstrated exemplary conservation leadership, restoring an endemic species from the edge of extinction to through its own expense and capacity. Well done, South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So my conclusion is that proposal CoP20, Prop 1 on Damaliscus, Pigargus, the Bontebok, to delete that species from Appendix II was accepted by consensus. So thank you very much. We now move to the next proposal, which is, Before we move to the next proposal, I would like to give the floor to the Secretary General. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to all. I hope you had an opportunity to take a good rest these past 2 days. I know there's still a lot of work to be done, and you probably still continued being very active, but hopefully you were able to visit some of the very beautiful places in Samarkand and outside of Samarkand that Uzbekistan has to offer. We have been doing some stock taking in the Secretariat about where we stand today in terms of the decision making that has been going on in the last days. And we have now set up a tracking system, and it's telling us that we have reached now the high number of 360 decisions already without having completed the work of the committees yet. And we have some concerns that we are now very close to the number of decisions that were taken at the last COP in Panama 3 years ago. We have been discussing the possibility of a prioritization, the concerns related to the difficulties that the Secretariat is facing financially, where we have a reduction of contributions, where we have arrears in contributions, where I've had to have a restructuring take place to reduce the number of staff to be able to meet the demands of the budget, the staff costing implications, delaying the recruitment of staff for 6 months to be able to take another look at how the contributions are doing next year in 2026, and be able to see if we will be able to do a recruitment of staff depending on the contributions that we have received. So this brings me some concerns that if we have the same amount of work that we had in the last intersessional period, that we had difficulties in being able to carry out with the staffing as it was, how will it look in the next intersessional period under the conditions that we are facing? So I would ask you that now that you are looking at the COM documents that are coming and the forthcoming discussions in this committee until we reach the plenary, that you take into consideration these issues and really try to find out what are the major priorities, what are the ones that will have most impact. Try to look at it as a stepwise process, that not everything can be done between now and the next standing committee next year in November. To also take into account some of the amendments that are being made to some of the draft decisions that are just being brought to the meeting now, that give very little time to understand what the cost implications are, some of the amendments that have been made to some proposals where no extra budgetary funding has been included, which will require additional work, additional travel, additional expertise to be able to carry out some of that work, and to consider that given the situation that we are encountering, maybe some things cannot be done. So I would appreciate very much this reflection on your part that some of the things will be maybe unrealistic for the Secretariat to carry out under these conditions, and that with as much as we want to do everything, as much as we stretch ourselves thin, and I'm not only speaking about the Secretariat, of course, because there's been a lot that has been assigned also to the committees, to the Standing Committee, to the Animals Committee, to the Plants Committee, and we already know that they are also burdened. We have seen also some deviation from the terms of reference of some of these committees that have, as they have been set up, what their terms of reference are, what they're supposed to be dedicated to. Take a look at that as well, that when some tasks are being associated with the Animals Committee or the Plants Committee, these are tasks that are supposed to be carried out solely by the Standing Committee. So I would appreciate some reflection, take a look at the COM docs and see where there can be a little bit of discretion about the amount of work and the financial resources that will be required to carry out this work, taking into consideration the discussions that are going on now in the budget working group. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. I think you all know where we stand, and please remind when you talk about additional decisions what you just heard, because some of this work will just not be able to have them done and get feedback on those. So please already prioritize now when you think about to submit decisions. So with this, I would now turn to Proposal 44 to transfer Euphorbia puplierifolia from Appendix II to Appendix I. This proposal has been submitted by South Africa. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Euphorbia puplierifolia is a long-lived, slow-growing, succulent plant species endemic to South Africa. It has been included in Appendix II of CITES since 1975 in the genus level listing of Euphorbia species. Recent field surveys of wild populations have revealed that there has been widespread and unsustainable harvesting of these plants for traditional medicine purposes at a local level, but also to supply international horticultural markets with these unique plants. A recent audit of the major nursery exporting the species revealed that wild plants were being misdeclared as artificially propagated. Around 70,000 plants have been exported from South Africa over a 20-year period between 1999 and 2019. And the impact on wild populations has been devastating. It is estimated that only 3% of the population remains. Altogether, around 2,500 plants, and the species is now critically endangered. Like many other plant species included in the appendices, Euphorbia plurifolia has received limited attention from conservation agencies, as scarce resources are directed towards animals, especially charismatic mammal species. This is a real-world consequence of the phenomenon of plant blindness. Euphorbia plurifolia now meets the criteria for inclusion in Appendix I, and South Africa is requesting parties to adopt this proposal to transfer the species to Appendix I. The Appendix I listing will ensure closer scrutiny of consignments by importing parties and enforce stricter regulatory measures on nurseries propagating the species to ensure that trade is limited to genuine, artificially propagated plants, as defined in Resolution Conf 1111 Rev COP 18 on the regulation of trade in plants. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. I open the floor for comments from parties. I see the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states. Euphorbia plurifolia meets the listing criteria for Appendix I and would benefit from stricter monitoring and protection under CITES, as well as from consequential strengthening of national measures both in South Africa and importing countries. As one of the major import markets, we have a particular responsibility for the protection of the species from international trade and are thus in full support of the transfer of Euphorbia plurifolia from Appendix II to Appendix I. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, we'd like to congratulate South Africa on bringing this proposal forward. It's important to point out that this is an endemic species again to South Africa, and is therefore important to support range states who know better how to protect their own species than others would. And we believe that this proposal meets the criteria which are required for listing or uplisting to Appendix I, and we would therefore support this proposal and request that other parties support it as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Eswatini. Lesotho.
It is evident from the information provided by South Africa that this species is under a lot of stress, with the population declining due to unsustainable harvest, and therefore we support the uplisting of this species, seeing that this Euphorbia species meets the requirement to be listed in Appendix I. We therefore support their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Sénégal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal prend la parole pour remercier et féliciter l'Afrique du Sud d'avoir pris des précautions pour empêcher le déclin définitif de cette espèce. Et donc appuie et demande aux autres parties d'appuyer cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports the proposal by South Africa to include the species on Appendix I, as it meets the listing criteria. We support South Africa's commendable work to protect succulent species from illegal wild harvesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monaco appuie cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. India.
Thank you, Chair. India supports the proposal by South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Malawi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Malawi is speaking on behalf of many other African countries to support this proposal.
Thank you. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe is in support of the uplisting of the species as presented by South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. I now close the speakers list for the moment. So I have Benin.
Merci, Madame. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Toutes mes excuses. Le Bénin prend la parole pour soutenir également cette proposition qui avait également été analysée au sein du groupe africain et avait obtenu un consensus pour un soutien. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya joins the other parties in supporting the uplisting of this proposal. Thank you.
Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Malaysia supports the proposal. Thank you.
Nigeria.
Thank you, Chair. Nigeria supports the proposal presented by South Africa for uplisting to Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Ethiopia.
Thank you, Chair. As it is the first time to take the floor, Ethiopia would like to extend its deepest gratitude and appreciation to the people and the government of Uzbekistan for hosting this important conference, and the Secretariat for the wonderful work to organize this COP. As this species is an endemic one that is threatened by illegal trade, Ethiopia would like to support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I open the floor to observers. I see Suko, South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. The Sustainable Use Coalition Southern Africa definitely supports this. We believe firmly that conservation begins with soils, extends to flora, and only ultimately then should fauna come into the play. Clearly, this convention unfortunately often leaves the flora element not as, let's say, emotionally driven as the fauna. As can be seen by the Bontebok proposal that has just passed uniquely with consensus, the South African authorities know how to work the CITES to the best advantage of the species concerned. And this will be an opportunity for our authorities to do exactly that again. More importantly, it's clear that it will not impact on those that make a living out of the propagation of the species. In fact, this will protect those who are legitimate actors in that regard, making sure that their business of propagation, just like in captive breeding, makes the revenue flow to those that do the best work. So it will have a very fast effect on saving the species. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, WWF.
Thank you, Chair. WWF warmly supports this proposal to uplist Euphorbia buplerifolia to Appendix 1. We commend South Africa for the hard work it's been doing, widely unrecognized, on the epidemic of illegal trade in succulent plants from their country, and we do urge parties to assist them in combating this trade. So, as we say, we support this proposal, and these comments stand in respect of Proposal 50 also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, WWF. So I would conclude that proposal CoP20 Prop 44 on Euphorbia buplerifolia to transfer the species from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 was accepted by consensus. Thank you very much. So we now turn our attention to CoP20 Proposal 50 on Avonia quinarian, which is also to transfer this species from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1, and it has been submitted also by South Africa. So South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Avonia quinaria is a long-lived and slow-growing succulent plant species endemic to South Africa and Namibia, but with only a marginal occurrence in Namibia. It has been included in Appendix 2 since 1975 under the genus level listing of Avonia. Unfortunately, this species has borne the brunt of a poaching crisis in the succulent Karoo biome, a biodiversity hotspot of the northwestern part of South Africa. Since 2019, over 24,000 illegally harvested Avonia quinaria plants have been confiscated. Added to this, at least 30,000 Wild plants of this species have been laundered as artificially propagated into the international ornamental horticultural trade to meet a persistent demand. Wild specimens continue to be observed on various online social media and trading platforms. Recent field surveys have revealed that the impact of illegal harvesting on wild populations has been severe, having caused a recent decline of over 50%. The remaining populations are now reduced in number and size and have a patchy distribution. Larger and therefore older individuals have been preferentially harvested. The conservation agencies in South Africa are struggling with limited budgets to protect wild populations of this and other species of succulents. Crucial socio-economic work to provide alternative livelihoods to the impoverished rural communities of the Karoo cannot proceed due to a lack of funding. This is yet another example of plant blindness, with a charismatic mammal species receiving a greater share of limited funding and resources. Avonia quinaria is now endangered and meets the criteria for Appendix I. South Africa is appealing to CITES parties to adopt this proposal to transfer Avonia quinaria to Appendix I so that it can benefit from stricter regulatory measures by both exporting and importing parties, thereby ensuring that the trade is limited to artificially propagated specimens as defined in Resolution Conf 1111 Rev COP 18 on the regulation of trade in plants. South Africa would welcome collaboration by parties to save the species from extinction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, South Africa. I would like now to open the floor to parties, recognizing that it is a very similar situation than the previous proposal, so please be brief in your interventions. Thank you. Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monaco soutient cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe supports the proposal as presented by South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the European Union and its member states, and to be brief, the European Union supports the proposal as proposed by South Africa.
Thank you. Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. Eswatini, again, would like to thank South Africa for this proposal, and we call for support of this proposal for the same reasons as given for proposal number 44. In particular, that range states are the best protectors of their own biodiversity and should lead in this aspect. South African proposals to this CoP20 show a balanced and responsible approach to listing proposals and to support the conservation efforts in biodiversity conservation, and we therefore call for support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Lesotho.
Thank you, Chair. It seems endemic succulents are facing a problem, and we support uplisting of this succulent species to Appendix I, looking at the patchy distribution and the declining population, yet there's a lot of demand in this species. We support. Thank you.
Thank you. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK also welcomes this proposal to uplist the species to Appendix I, as it meets the listing criteria. As previously noted, we support South Africa's ongoing work to protect succulent species, and we are pleased to see this work being highlighted at this COP. Thank you.
Thank you. Burundi.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Burundi soutient la proposition. Merci.
Thank you. Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Malaysia supports the proposal.
Thank you. Burkina Faso.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Burkina Faso appuie également la proposition de l'Afrique du Sud. Merci.
Thank you. Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the information provided, Kenya supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I now close the list, and I have 6, 7 more. So Namibia.
Thank you, Chair. We support the proposal.
Thank you. India.
Thank you, Chair. We support the proposal.
Thank you. Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal soutient cette proposition également.
Thank you. Sudan.
Thank you, Chair. Sudan also supports the proposal as it proposed by South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Sudan. Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. Pakistan supports this proposal brought by South Africa.
Thank you. 2 more. Rwanda.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of African Group, Rwanda supports this proposal by South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last, Tanzania.
Thank you, Chair. Tanzania commends South Africa conservation model. We support the proposal.
Thank you very much. Before concluding, I would like now open the floor for observers. Seeing none, but having heard what was said previously by the 2 observers, which were also including this proposal, I think it is also obvious that we have support. So I would conclude that proposal CoP20 Prop 50 on Avonia quinarian to transfer the species from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 was accepted by consensus. So thank you very much. Now we move our attention to CoP20 Prop 24 on Bitis harenna, the Ethiopian mountain adder, and Bitis parviocula, the Bale Mountains adder. It's a proposal to include these 2 species in Appendix 1, and the proponent is Ethiopia. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, the snake species Bitis parviocula and Bitis harenna are endemic to Ethiopia, highly threatened and extremely rare in the wild. The IUCN assessment of Bitis parviocula in 2014 has classified the species as endangered with a continuing population decline, and Bitis harenna has been described as localized separate species. The area of occupancy of Bitis parviocula is therefore even smaller than the 20 kilometers square identified by the assessment, and this species is found in less than 5 locations. Mr. Chair, their restricted distribution and rarity in the wild indicate that these species are highly susceptible to both intrinsic and extrinsic threats, including habitat loss and exploitation. Due to their limited range, small population size, striking coloration, and slow-moving behavior, their survival is severely threatened by ongoing illegal collection for the international pet market. Traders have described them as probably the most beautiful species of snakes that exists. Although Ethiopian law has strictly protected these 2 species from exploitation since 1957, and specifically from collection, possession, transport, and export of both live individuals and their derivatives since 2005, there are regular online offers for sale of this species. Ethiopia rejects claims of any legal export having taken place and has explained in the proposal it is also highly skeptical of all but one documented claim that has been made of successful captive breeding. We are therefore seriously concerned with claims regarding the origin of specimens in the trade and believe that these claims facilitate the laundering of illegally caught and exported specimens into legal trade. Mr. Chair and distinguished colleagues, this illegal trade undermines Ethiopia's legislation and effort to safeguard its biodiversity. Furthermore, Ethiopia shares porous land borders with 6 different countries, which further complicates our law enforcement efforts that attempt to prevent cross-border smuggling. We therefore appeal to the international community to join hands with us and assist our effort to prevent further illegal exploitation of the world's remnant precious endemic in the wild with the CITES Appendix I listing. Mr. Chair and distinguished colleagues, endemics are part of our common heritage and needs our concerted effort to prevent their extinction and ensure their survival into the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ethiopia. Or to parties. I see New Zealand has asked for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand supports the proposal to list Bitis harena and Bitis parviocula in CITES Appendix I. These species are endemic to Ethiopia. There is conclusive evidence that species that are endemic to one country are disproportionately vulnerable to extinction. These species of adders have never been legally exported, yet they appear in international trade. Trade pressure, in addition to all other threats, can result in species extinction in the wild when populations are already extremely small and localized. We urge parties to the Convention to support Ethiopia's efforts to protect their endemic species from illegal trade and to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I have Djibouti.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. La République de Djibouti appuie cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. Tunisia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Tunisie soutient la proposition de l'Éthiopie. Merci.
Thank you. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We highly appreciate the efforts of Ethiopia to protect its endemic fauna. The biological criteria for listing in Appendix I seem to be met for both species. Bitis parviocula has been reported in international trade as well as in zoos in third countries. There is no solid evidence for international trade in Bitis harena so far. However, the species was only described in 2016 from a single museum specimen, and we understand it is confined to a small range only. We feel that an Appendix II listing with a 0 quota would have been an appropriate first step to monitor and regulate trade in the 2 species that would provide sufficient safeguards for the wild population. We also feel that a listing in Appendix I may not sufficiently address the concern just raised by Ethiopia with regard to specimens that might have been acquired in third countries in violation of Ethiopian law if these go back to pre-convention specimens. Nevertheless, we acknowledge that endemic species are nationally protected since over 50 years and finally support the proposal as it stands, and after constructive exchange with Ethiopia, are confident that the listing could kickstart collaborative efforts between Ethiopia and consumer countries to improve research on and protection of the species in the spirit of the Convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. I have now Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monaco soutient cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia supports the proposal given endemic species are threatened by trade. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom appreciates the work of Ethiopia in bringing forward this proposal. Both species are endemic to Ethiopia and appear to be highly threatened due to their naturally restricted distribution and habitat loss. Reports suggest some presence in international trade, despite Ethiopia's long-standing export ban, although the scale and impact of this trade is unclear. While there is considerable uncertainty due to limited population data, a precautionary approach is warranted in this case, noting the restricted area of distribution and the vulnerability of these species to intrinsic factors. Following this approach, we consider that a criterion B is met and support the inclusion of these species in Appendix 1. Indeed, an Appendix 1 listing could help ensure traceability and support Ethiopia's conservation efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Distingués délégués, la Côte d'Ivoire félicite l'Éthiopie pour cette proposition sur 2 espèces endémiques à son territoire. Les preuves scientifiques, le commerce illégal actuel et la vulnérabilité de ces 2 espèces de serpents endémiques justifient clairement la proposition de l'Éthiopie. Nous nous réjouissons que l'Éthiopie ait proposé une inscription à l'annexe 1. Compte tenu de leur extrême rareté, de leur population réduite, de leur aire de répartition très restreinte et de leur grand attrait pour les collectionneurs, seule une protection internationale très stricte peut empêcher efficacement toute nouvelle exploitation illégale et soutenir les efforts de conservation de l'Éthiopie. Des mesures internationales fortes doivent être prises pour assurer la survie des espèces dans la nature. La Côte d'Ivoire souhaite donc exprimer son soutien sans réserve à l'inscription de ces espèces à l'annexe 1 de la CITES. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. Eswatini would like to submit that it would appear that the species clearly meets the criteria for listing in Appendix 1. We also support this range state of an endemic species in their effort to support the conservation of the species. We also call for support to this proposal and urge Ethiopia to increase conservation efforts within Ethiopia and to engage countries abroad to support control of illegal trade in the species. We therefore call on parties to support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So far, I only have support, so I will allow some more parties, but please be really brief. We are already a bit short on time, so we have to advance. So please be really brief when I call you up. Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya aligns with the EU, the United Kingdom, and other parties in support of the proposal by Ethiopia. Listing of the 2 species that are endemic to Ethiopia in the CITES appendices will not only help in regulating trade, but enhance on monitoring. Kenya supports Ethiopia proposal for inclusion of the 2 species in CITES Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I would like to support the proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Bitis arena et Bitis parviocula sont endémiques en Éthiopie et remplissent bien les critères de l'annexe 1. C'est pour cette raison que nous soutenons cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. Pakistan would like to support this proposal. Thank you.
Okay, I will take 3 more, and then I will close the list. I have South Africa.
Thank you, Chair, and we congratulate Ethiopia for bringing this proposal to the Conference of the Parties, and we strongly support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan highly acknowledged Ethiopia's efforts to implement domestic conservation measures. While there are indications of poaching and illegal trade of wild specimens, the impact on wild populations remains unclear. So in this context, we would like to echo EU. We believe Appendix 2 listing of these species may be more appropriate. Thank you.
And Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe is in support of the proposal by Ethiopia. Thank you.
Okay, I have now still a lot of parties wanting to take the floor, but I think it's obvious that we do have very strong support. So parties who are in favor of this proposal, please take yourself off the list. We have seen you, we have recognized you. If Central African Republic is in favor of the proposal, please take yourself off the list. Okay, Central African Republic.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est juste pour appuyer la proposition faite par l'Éthiopie. Merci.
Thank you very much. So I would open the floor to observers. I have Born Free Foundation.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of 12 organizations, we congratulate the government of Ethiopia on their proposal to protect two of its threatened snakes. We highlight that the proponent is the sole range state for both species, and as New Zealand noted in its intervention, Ethiopia has never authorized exports of either species. Given the noted difficulty of successful breeding in captivity, like the proponent, we are concerned by ongoing trade in the international pet market, which is significant given the size and distribution of both species populations. As we've heard also from the proponent and in parallel discussions here at CoP20, there is widespread recognition and consensus that endemic species require stronger protection from international trade, and we urge parties to support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. United States Association of Reptile Keepers.
Good afternoon, Chair. The U.S. Association of Reptile Keepers, supported by several other organizations whose name will be provided, intervenes on this proposal to correct two fundamental errors of fact. First, on several occasions at this COP, USARC has heard members of the Ethiopian CITES delegation assert that Bitis parvicola is difficult to breed in captivity. This is incorrect. While these species, like most venomous snakes, are not produced in very large numbers, dedicated venomous keepers have mastered the husbandry and breeding of Bitis in captivity.
Can you be a bit slower? I think the interpreters will appreciate that very much.
Sorry, Chair. Because these expert breeders typically operate outside of academia and commercial zoological sector, the relevant husbandry information is not readily accessible to bureaucrats. Had USARC or any other reptile keeper organization had been consulted, we could have provided Ethiopia with contacts who could have demonstrated successful ex situ captive breeding of the species in US, UK, Germany, Slovenia, and Sweden. Second, we must correct the record regarding commercial exports. Ethiopia claims that it has never legally exported these species for commercial purposes. Ethiopia appears to be mistaken. USARC has obtained signed and stamped documents from the Ethiopian Wildlife Conservation Department of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, establishing an annual commercial export quota for the Ethiopian endemic Bitis parvicola. This document was issued to an Ethiopian commercial wildlife trader in 2007 and accompanied a shipment of 21 Bitis parvicola that was cleared into the U.S. by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. These documents
Can you please slow down?
Sorry. These documents will be provided to the Secretary, and we appreciate their inclusion in the record. USARC advises that rather than listing these species on Appendix I, the party should consider listing them on Appendix II with a zero quota. However, if these species are listed on Appendix I, parties must recognize that Ethiopia's statements are incorrect. Ethiopia has commercially exported this species. If captive breeding facilities for these species are later proposed for registration, any objection based on the claim that Ethiopia has never exported them commercially should be rejected or subjected to strict scrutiny. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I have to go back to Japan because parties have been quite in consensus to support that proposal. It was only Japan who maintained that it should be an Appendix II with zero export quota. So Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We won't block the consensus. We will not block the consensus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would conclude that proposal 24 to include Bitis harena and Bitis parviocula in Appendix I was accepted by consensus. Now we turn our attention to CoP20 Proposal 25 on Crotalus SPP and Cistrurus SPP, rattlesnakes. It's a proposal to include Crotalus lepidus and Crotalus ravus in Appendix II and include the genera Crotalus and Cistrurus also in Appendix II. The proposal has been submitted by Bolivia and Mexico, so I see Mexico asking for the floor, so you can introduce the document. Thank you.
Gracias, señor presidente. México y Bolivia proponen la inclusión de las serpientes de cascabel, Crotalus ravus y Crotalus lepidus en el apéndice 2, en concordancia con el artículo 2, incisos A y B del texto de la Convención y a la resolución CONF 9.24 en su anexo 2A, inciso B, así como los géneros Crotalus y Cisturus en el apéndice 2 en concordancia con su anexo 2B, inciso A. Crotalus ravus es una especie endémica del centro de México, mientras que Crotalus lepidus se distribuye desde el sur de Estados Unidos hasta el centro de México. Aunque no se cuenta con datos poblacionales precisos, ambas especies parecen presentar una baja abundancia o son raras incluso dentro de áreas naturales protegidas. En nuestra legislación, Crotalus ravus se considera amenazada y Crotalus lepidus se considera sujeta a protección especial, aunque evaluaciones recientes sugieren que podrían calificar como en peligro y amenazada respectivamente. Ambas especies son perseguidas por ser venenosas y enfrentan presiones por el cambio de uso de suelo. Crotalus ravus es extraída ilegalmente a nivel nacional como mascota o para remedios médicos, siendo la cuarta especie del género Crotalus más decomisada en México. También, de manera ilegal, Crotalus lepidus parece ser ampliamente colectada para elaborar cápsulas de carne seca, incluso con problemas de salmonelosis. Se estima que la extracción, que en parte deriva en comercio internacional, puede tener un impacto importante que, sumado a otras amenazas, genere aislamiento o extirpaciones locales. Aunque el comercio ilegal es dominado por 6 especies de Crotalus, se ha registrado el uso de hasta 28 especies con fines comerciales, incluyendo varias de las 30 especies endémicas de México para las que no se han emitido permisos de exportación, pero existen criaderos en otros países. Señor presidente, solo se pueden diferenciar ejemplares o pieles completos con el conteo y patrones de escamas, pero la mayor parte de los especímenes en el comercio son extractos, derivados o pedazos de piel, y el 85% son reportados a nivel de género. Por lo anterior, proponemos la inclusión de los géneros Crotalus y Cisturus para facilitar el control del comercio. Por último, quisiéramos hacer una corrección en el cuadro 3 de la sección 6.4, en la columna titulada Comercio Ilegal Internacional, que hace referencia a Canadá con respecto a la obtención de licencias de caza, pues al revisar nuevamente la fuente, observamos que no menciona específicamente a ningún país. Agradecemos a Canadá por la observación e invitamos a la conferencia de las partes a apoyar esta propuesta. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mexico. I open now the floor to parties. I see Argentina.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Como Estado del área de distribución del género Crotalus, apoyamos la propuesta 25 presentada por Bolivia y México. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I have now Bolivia.
Buenos días, señor presidente. Bolivia es coproponente junto con México para incluir a los géneros Crotalus y Cistrurus en el apéndice 2 porque estamos seguros de que cumplen con los criterios de las CITES. En nuestro país estas especies están protegidas legalmente y se ha constatado que existe un comercio ilícito con estas serpientes, principalmente con productos como colas y cueros. A diferencia de otros países en los que el comercio internacional ilegal está dirigido a países como los Estados Unidos, Unión Europea. En Bolivia, este comercio se enfoca en los países asiáticos y es preocupante de que exista una demanda internacional ilegal de ejemplares vivos, así como de sus partes, y que dicha demanda pueda crecer sin estar regulada. Es claro para todos nuestros países lo difícil que es detener este tipo de tráfico internacional, por lo que se estima que la cantidad de cargamentos que no han sido detectadas antes de ser exportadas y que están poniendo en riesgo a las poblaciones silvestres con una captura desmedida es mucho mayor. Se requiere el apoyo de los países consumidores para detectar estas exportaciones ilegales al llegar a su destino. Es por esta razón que se necesita la ayuda de los países de las CITES para regular ahí el comercio ilegal y detener el tráfico internacional. El apéndice 2 no es una prohibición del comercio internacional, es tan solo su regulación para que se realice de forma sustentable, evitando la sobreexplotación legal e ilegal, y solicitamos ahí el apoyo de todos los países partes de las CITES para proteger estas especies de víboras de cascabel, incluyéndolas en el apéndice 2 de CITES. Gracias.
Thank you, Bolivia. Now we have Guatemala.
Buenos días, señor presidente, y al Pleno. Guatemala, como país estado de distribución de alguna de estas especies, apoyamos la propuesta presentada por México y Bolivia. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. I have Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monaco appuie cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. I have the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We appreciate the efforts of Bolivia and Mexico to protect their native fauna. However, based on the available information, the EU agrees with the assessment of the Secretariat and of the IUCN and traffic analysis that there's insufficient evidence to confirm listing criteria are met. We therefore cannot support the listing of all rattlesnake species in Appendix II at this stage. We recognize that main threats to rattlesnakes in general include local hunting and habitat alteration. The impact of international trade on wild populations of the two lead species is not fully understood, noting that limited live trade mainly involves captive-bred juveniles. When it comes to trade in medicinal products, it is difficult to comprehend the extent and how the number of products converts to live specimens, which seems necessary to understand the potential impact of this trade. We therefore feel that listing the genera in Appendix III would be an appropriate first step to better understand the role and the extent of trade, the role of different markets, as well as associated enforcement challenges, and we hope that RAIN states would consider this option. That said, we agree that a further assessment of the needs for higher international protection of all the rattlesnakes is warranted, and we, as a consumer countries, are open to work with RAIN states, as just pointed out by Bolivia, to collect more data and explore the need for guidance, such as on specific identification, in order to implement any future listing. In that context, the EU can also consider listing rattlesnakes in Annex D of our EU regulation if RAIN states will not consider listing in CITES Appendix III. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, EU. I've now the Comoros.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'Union des Comores souhaite exprimer son plein soutien à la proposition conjointe de la Bolivie et du Mexique. Il faut noter que les informations fournies dans le document de proposition montrent clairement que ces espèces sont déjà rares dans la nature, que leur habitat se fragmente et qu'ils font l'objet d'un commerce actif, notamment pour les remèdes de produits médicinaux. Dans un tel contexte, la poursuite d'un commerce international non réglementé serait irresponsable. Il faut noter bien que l'inscription de ces deux espèces à l'annexe 2 ne vise pas à interdire toute utilisation, mais à l'encadrer pour garantir que les prélèvements restent compatibles avec la survie des populations sauvages. C'est dans ce sens que, Monsieur le Président, l'Union des Comores se tient aux côtés des partenaires d'Amérique latine et invite les parties à soutenir cette proposition pour éviter que ces espèces ne basculent demain vers l'annexe 1. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. Brazil is a range state for a species of rattlesnake and fully supports the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Congo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La République du Congo remercie tout d'abord la Bolivie et le Mexique pour cette proposition très détaillée et rigoureuse. En tant que pays de transit potentiel pour le commerce des reptiles et autres espèces sauvages, nous voyons chaque jour que les autorités de contrôle ne peuvent pas faire des miracles lorsque les listes CITES sont très fragmentées et que les produits sont impossibles à identifier au niveau de l'espèce. En proposant d'inscrire les Crotalus et les Cicetrus, les auteurs de la proposition offrent aux douaniers un outil clair. À cet effet, le Congo félicite nos partenaires d'Amérique latine de cette initiative que nous soutenons pleinement. Nous invitons donc l'ensemble des parties à appuyer cette proposition afin de protéger ces serpents avant que leur population ne subisse des déclins irréversibles. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I now have United States.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the best available information at this time, the United States believes that Crotalus lepidus and Crotalus ravus do not appear to meet the criteria B in Annex 2A of Resolution Conference 9.24 for their inclusion in Appendix 2. Without information for both species on their current population size and trend, and a clearer picture of their levels of offtake, both legal and illegal, it is difficult to conclude that regulation of trade is needed to ensure that the harvest of specimens from the wild is not reducing their wild populations to levels at which their survival might be threatened by continued harvesting or other influences. Nevertheless, if inclusion of Crotalus lepidus and or Crotalus ravus in Appendix 2 is adopted by the Conference of the Parties, and in light of the reported difficulty of identifying rattlesnake parts and derivatives, which are the majority type of product in trade to individual species, Crotalus SPP and Cisteris SPP would appear to meet criterion A and Annex 2B of Resolution Conference 9.24 for their inclusion in Appendix 2. However, given that most of the illegal trade in the species is more generally contrary to existing domestic measures rather than based on laundering due to look-alike issues, and as a range state for many of the species, the United States believes it would be premature to take this added step of adding dozens of species to Appendix 2 at this time that are not of elevated conservation concern. Instead, we believe the trade should be monitored over the next intersessional period to determine if any look-alike listings are necessary under criteria A of Annex 2B for the other species. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I have United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK notes the concerns highlighted in this proposal. However, the available data indicate that international trade in Crotalus lepidus and Crotalus ravus is very limited, and there is no clear evidence of significant population decline or restricted distribution for these species. For the wider genus listing, most trade appears to involve captive bred specimens, and there is insufficient evidence that international trade is impacting wild populations at a level that would justify an Appendix II listing. Domestic use and persecution seem to present more significant threats. In our view, the proposal does not meet the criteria for listing in Appendix II, and therefore we oppose this listing proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. I now have El Salvador.
Gracias, señor presidente. Primera vez que tomamos la palabra y queremos agradecer a la República de Uzbekistán por su caluroso recibimiento y a la Secretaría por la organización del evento. El Salvador forma parte de la distribución del género de Crotalus y queremos apoyar la incorporación al Apéndice II. Gracias.
Thank you. I have Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the proponent for putting this proposal together and their intention. However, like many other parties that have taken the floor, we reflected on this proposal in the Africa group, and many parties shared the same sentiments that there is no scientific evidence that is meriting the listing of this rattlesnake species in Appendix II. Therefore, our decisions need to be guided by science, and perhaps the proponent might need to consider even other measures such as creating species-specific management plans, and also perhaps maybe even an Appendix III listing, and then they address the specific issues that are confronting these species. International trade does not seem to be a factor that is affecting these species at this stage. Therefore, we are not in support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I now have Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Nous remercions la Bolivie et le Mexique d'avoir présenté cette proposition que nous soutenons, et nous demandons aussi aux uns et aux autres de soutenir cette proposition. Merci.
Okay, I think I am getting a sense of the room that we will not have an agreement, will not have a consensus on this issue, so I propose that we will be going to a vote. I take two more parties, and then I will ask observers to make their statements, and then I will go for a vote. I see Iran.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to support the proposal. Thank you, based on the information provided by the proponent countries and also the increased demand for the species. Thank you very much.
And last speaker, Mali.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous apportons notre soutien à la proposition conjointe de l'État pluriel de la Bolivie et du Mexique visant à inscrire le Crotalus lepidus, Crotalus ravis ainsi que les genres Crotalus citrustus à l'annexe 2 de la CITES. Le Mali fait partie de l'ère de répartition de ces espèces. L'inscription à l'annexe 2 permettra de renforcer la traçabilité, d'assurer une gestion durable et de soutenir les efforts de conservation conformément aux objectifs de la Convention. Cette mesure constitue un pas important vers un meilleur encadrement du commerce international de ces espèces, dont certaines sont déjà soumises à des pressions croissantes liées à leur collecte, persécution et à la dégradation de leur habitat. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Now I open the floor to observers for comments. I see Western Fish and Wildlife Agencies.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the 50 state wildlife agencies within the United States, we oppose this proposal. As noted, Crotalus ravis and Crotalus lepidus do not meet the criteria for inclusion in Appendix II. Additionally, the proposal would add more than 50 species in the genera Crotalus and Cicisturus in Appendix II for lookalike reasons. Adding over 50 species for lookalike reasons will create a significant burden to the parties with no conservation benefit. The range of Crotalus lepidus occurs within 3 United States, the state of Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. Only 126 specimens were exported from the United States in the last decade. This demonstrates an insignificant level of commercial interest in the species. International trade is not a threat to these rattlesnakes, and the state fish and wildlife agencies within the U.S. oppose Proposal 25. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I have SSN.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Este género de Crotalus comprende 58 especies de víboras de cascabel que se distribuyen desde Canadá hasta Argentina. De estas 58 especies, 30 son endémicas de México. De las 58 especies del género, 46 se encuentran en el comercio internacional, tanto legal como ilegal. La mayoría de estas especies habitan en México y Crotalus rabus es una especie endémica en peligro de extinción y es la tercera especie más confiscada en México. Tan solo Estados Unidos importó y exportó más de 300,000 especímenes de 32 especies de víboras de cascabel que involucran a 54 países entre el 2012 y el 2024. El 99% de todo el comercio internacional se realiza con partes y derivados que no pueden ser identificados. Y de estos, 93% provino de ejemplares silvestres. Crotalus rabus se utiliza principalmente para el mercado de mascotas y la mayoría salió ilegalmente de México hacia Estados Unidos y Europa, donde las crían y las reexportan. La mayoría de las exportaciones de Crotalus lepidus son partes y derivados ilegales. Los países de América Latina del área de distribución de las víboras de cascabel apoyan esta propuesta de México y de Bolivia. Para el mercado de mascotas, esto es de menor preocupación porque estamos hablando de un mercado de productos y subproductos. Exhortamos, por lo tanto, a todos los países de las CITES que apoyen
can you please conclude your overtime?
Exhortamos a todos los países que apoyen la inclusión en el apéndice 2 presentada por México y Bolivia. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. So I think we will, as I concluded before, I think we have to go to a vote. I see Niger, you have to ask for the floor. Niger, did you forget to take yourself off the list? Then that's okay as well. Niger.
No.
So with this, I will go to a vote on Proposal 25. The proposal is to include Crotalus lepidus and Crotalus rabus in Appendix II and to include the whole genera of Crotalus and Cistrurus in Appendix II. If you vote yes, you are in favor of this proposal. If you vote no, you are against that proposal. The voting type is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. Since this is a vote on a proposal for amendments to Appendices 1 or 2, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. Technicians are ready, so parties, You have now 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Technician, can you please display the results on the screen? With 45 votes in favor, 66 against, and 27 abstentions, proposal CoP20, proposal 25, to include Crotalus and Cistrurus SPP in Appendix II was rejected. Now we move to next proposal, which is CoP20 Proposal 26 on Cynixis homeana. This proposal proposes to include, to transfer the species Cynixis homeana from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. It has been submitted by Cameroon, Guinea, Nigeria, and Togo. Oh, sorry, I'm a bit quick. We first have to display the results of the individual results on the screen before I can continue. So please, technicians, could you display them on the screen? Thank you. Okay, now we can move to the next proposal, which is Proposal 26, to transfer Cynixis homeana from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. Proponents are Cameroon, Guinea, Nigeria, and Togo. So who is going to present? I see Togo. Togo, you have the floor.
Bien, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole. Et le Togo vous renouvelle ses félicitations à vous ainsi qu'à votre bureau. Je souhaite dans un premier temps rappeler l'aire de répartition restreinte de Cynixis homeana qui ne se trouve qu'au Bénin, au Cameroun, en Côte d'Ivoire, au Ghana, au Libéria, au Nigeria et au Togo, et qui constitue une espèce forestière emblématique de l'Afrique de l'Ouest et du Centre. Cette espèce est classée en danger critique d'extinction selon les évaluations de l'UCN et les populations sont en forte baisse dans toute son aire de répartition avec des déclins marqués. Nous souhaitons également attirer l'attention de toutes les parties sur les différentes menaces qui pèsent sur cette espèce Cynixis homeana. D'abord, la perte d'habitat approprié dans l'aire de répartition déjà restreinte, fragmentée et affectée par une déforestation très importante et aggravée par les changements climatiques. Ensuite, la capture pour la consommation locale et à des fins médicinales et rituelles. Et enfin, le commerce international d'animaux de compagnie. Monsieur le Président, à ces menaces s'ajoutent d'importantes difficultés rencontrées dans les élevages et la production en captivité de cette espèce, qui est connue pour être difficile à maintenir et à reproduire en captivité. Je voudrais revenir sur le commerce international. Il est important de souligner qu'entre 1990 et 2020, plus de 86 individus ont été enregistrés dans le commerce international légal. Et selon les statistiques complètes de la CITES, plus de 114 000 spécimens vivants ont été exportés depuis 1975, principalement à partir du Bénin, du Ghana et du Togo. Et dans ce commerce international, plus de 114 spécimens ont été saisis en une seule année par l'Espagne, le Royaume-Uni et les États-Unis d'Amérique. Il faut également signaler que cette tortue terrestre a été identifiée comme la 3e espèce de reptile la plus saisie en Belgique sur la période 2007-2016. Monsieur le Président, au vu de tout ce qui précède, Kinesis homeana nécessite clairement un niveau de protection internationale beaucoup plus élevé par son inscription à l'annexe 1 de la CITES, et les pays porteurs de cette proposition, je vais citer le Togo, le Cameroun, la Guinée et le Nigeria, estiment qu'elle remplit pleinement les critères biologiques et commerciaux de l'annexe 1 et sollicitent le soutien de toutes les parties afin que cette proposition puisse être adoptée. Et notre souhait que l'adoption se fasse par consensus. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Togo. I have now Cameroon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Cameroun est co-auteur de cette proposition de transfert de Kinesis homeana de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1. Dans notre pays, cette tortue forestière fait l'objet déjà d'une forte pression de chasse, y compris à l'intérieur et autour des aires protégées, avec des estimations de prélèvements annuels élevées. Combiné à l'importance de la consommation locale de la viande de brousse et à la dégradation et perte de l'habitat, cette exploitation ne laisse quasiment aucune marge pour un commerce international durable. Conformément donc à l'article 2, paragraphe 1 et de l'annexe 1 de la Convention, il est clair que l'espèce remplit pleinement les critères d'inscription à l'annexe 1 via notamment son statut en danger critique d'extinction et son déclin très important et continu des populations. Le Cameroun invite donc les parties ici présentes à soutenir cette proposition. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Sénégal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal prend la parole pour exprimer son soutien à cette proposition du Cameroun, de la Guinée, du Nigeria et du Togo pour sauver non seulement cette espèce qui est devenue très rare, nous en avons dans nos aires protégées et que la reproduction est trop lente. Et nous pensons que les données avancées dans le document remplissent pleinement son inscription afin que nous puissions sauver cette espèce. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Bénin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Bénin est également un pays de l'aire de répartition de cette espèce extrêmement menacée et qui fait d'ailleurs l'objet du commerce important. Et sur cette base, le Bénin soutient cette proposition. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. And Pakistan supports the proposal 26. Thank you.
Thank you. Congo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Congo souhaite exprimer d'abord son soutien résolu à la proposition visant à transférer Kinesis homeana à l'annexe 1. En tant que pays de forêt tropicale d'Afrique centrale, nous sommes particulièrement sensibles au sort des tortues forestières et à la dégradation rapide de leurs habitats. Les données compilées par les États de l'aire de répartition montrent que l'habitat adéquat pour cette espèce a chuté d'environ 90% en 45 ans. L'espèce est maintenant en danger critique d'extinction selon l'UICN. Les populations se sont effondrées, avec des extirpations locales des documents dans plusieurs pays, y compris dans les aires de répartition et même dans les aires protégées. Et le commerce international, principalement pour les animaux de compagnie, a déjà mobilisé de dizaines de milliers d'individus. Cette situation n'est pas sans rappeler celle d'autres espèces fortement exploitées. On passe d'un commerce intense à un effondrement silencieux des populations. Et lorsque la communauté internationale réagit, il est parfois trop tard. En tant que pays forestier, le Congo considère qu'il est de notre responsabilité commune de protéger les espèces emblématiques des forêts d'Afrique de l'Ouest et centrale, qui jouent un rôle écologique important, notamment dans la dispersion des graines, le recyclage de la matière organique et l'équilibre des réseaux trophiques. L'inscription à l'annexe 1 mettra fin au commerce international à des fins commerciales des spécimens sauvages, facilitera l'application de la loi en clarifiant le régime de commerce et soutiendra les efforts nationaux de lutte contre la viande de brousse et le trafic des espèces menacées. Le Congo appelle donc les parties à soutenir cette proposition pour éviter la disparition d'une tortue forestière unique. Je vous en remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Now I have Tunisia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Tunisie appuie fortement la proposition 26 présentée par le Cameroun, la Guinée, le Nigeria et le Togo, qui concerne le transfert de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1 de la CITES d'une espèce classée par l'UICN en danger critique d'extinction. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe fully supports the proposal as submitted by Cameroon, Guinea, Nigeria, and Togo to uplist the home-hinged bag tortoise, home-hinged tortoises from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We support the efforts by Cameroon, Guinea, Nigeria, and Togo to better protect Cynixis homiana, a critically endangered species with declining populations. We agree that biological criteria for listing at Appendix 1 are met and that the species may be affected by trade as per Resolution CONF 924. We also note the species is mainly threatened by habitat loss and harvest for the bushmeat trade. Nevertheless, international trade may pose an additional threat to the species if not well regulated. As such, the species is currently also subject to the RST for 3 range states. Some range states have currently published 0 export quotas for the species. We therefore support uplisting the species in Appendix 1. That said, we emphasize that complementary measures to address the key threats, which may include in situ and ex situ measures, in line with IUCN's One Plan approach, are needed to effectively protect the species in the long term. And we therefore hope that an uplisting will strengthen cross-border collaboration in the best interest of the species and also to avoid unintended negative effects on the conservation of the species that might come along with uplisting. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. I now have Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. The threats posed to this species, like most other African tortoises, appear to be significant, including international trade for various reasons. It would appear to meet the criteria for listing in Appendix 1 from Appendix 2, according to Resolution 9.24. We note that range states are in strong support of this listing, and as the best protectors of your natural resources, we support this. However, we would also like to urge the range states to increase domestic conservation efforts throughout the species range to complement a listing under or a elevated listing under the CITES Convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now I have Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente. Panamá solamente quiere manifestar que apoya la propuesta 26.
I will allow 3 more speakers. I still have a long list, but I haven't heard anybody opposed to that proposal, so I will take 3 more parties and then open the floor for observers. I have the United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports the proposal to transfer Kinixis homiana from Appendix II to Appendix I because we have determined that the proposal meets the criteria in Annex 1 of Resolution COP 9.24. Thank you.
Thank you. Djibouti.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Pour gagner du temps, nous appuyons cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. And the final speaker is Burundi.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Burundi appuie la proposition.
Thank you very much. So I have a clear view of the room. I would now open the floor for 2 observer parties. It's Provide Life.
Thank you very much, Chair. I make this intervention on behalf of 9 NGOs. We would like to echo the overwhelming support for this proposal. The Holmes Hingeback tortoise clearly meets the criteria for listing in Appendix I. It is critically endangered and has suffered a serious population decline observed and ongoing through its range. Local extirpations, ongoing and projected habitat loss, and very high levels of exploitation and international trade. We call on parties to respond to these urgent threats and support this important proposal by Cameroon, Guinea, Nigeria, and Togo to uplist this highly threatened tortoise to CITES Appendix I. Thank you.
Thank you. And United Association of Reptile Keepers, but please be really slow. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The U.S. Association of Reptile Keepers, supported by several other organizations whose names will be provided, intervenes on this proposal to correct certain factual errors. Captive breeding of tortoises has advanced substantially in recent decades and now occurs routinely in almost all commonly traded species. This includes Holmes Hingeback tortoise, Kinixis homiana. The proposal asserts that the species is difficult to breed in captivity, yet that claim rests on a single throwaway sentence in a research paper which is more than 10 years old. Had tortoise breeders, including our members, been consulted, this error could have been avoided. The species is no longer considered difficult to breed. Advances in tortoise management, biology, and husbandry have made Kinixis homiana, like many other tortoise species, relatively easy to reproduce in captivity. Commercial breeding of this species by private tortoise enthusiasts and keepers is active in the West and much of the rest of the world. This expertise is not confined to zoos. In many cases, private keepers maintain deeper and more current knowledge than zoological experts. We find the proposal's presumption that ranched and captive bred specimens are of dubious origin to be unreasonable. Rather than listing the species on Appendix I, USARC recommends keeping the Appendix II listing with a 0 quota from the wild for collected specimens, along with a maximum size limit for exported animals. This is consistent with measures applied to other reptiles produced in their range states. This should be paired with continued intersectional work, including continued significant trade reviews to verify sources of trade animals and conduct additional assessments of the current threats of the species. Finally, the proposal acknowledges that trade consists only about 10% of the species' overall threat, and much of that 10% is related to the domestic trade for consumption of its meat and of making of instruments. A sustainable pet trade would maintain the species' value and incentivize its preservation in the wild. We are concerned that an Appendix I listing may devalue the species to the point that it produces unintended consequences detrimental to the wild population, such as increasing consumption of bushmeat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I had closed the list, so Comoros, can you please take yourself off the list unless you are in opposition to that proposal? Thank you. So I would conclude that the proposal COP20, proposal 26 to transfer Kinixis homiana from Appendix II to Appendix I was accepted by consensus. I would like to turn your attention to Proposal 27 on Pelophylax epeiroticus, Pelophylax lesona, Pelophylax ridibundus, and Pelophylax scipericus. Oh, these names. The proposal is to include these species in Appendix II, with an entry into effect of the inclusion in Appendix II would be delayed by 18 months. So the proponents are the European Union, Israel, and North Macedonia. So who is going to introduce the proposal? I think it's the European Union. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. The EU and its member states, together with Israel and North Macedonia, propose the inclusion of Pelophylax eperoticus, redibundus, and scipericus in CITES Appendix II with an 18-month implementation delay. The inclusion is justified due to high levels of harvest for international trade, unfavorable conservation status, and declining population trends in populations that are targeted for the international trade, satisfying criterion B in Annex 2A of Resolution Conf 924 Ref CoP17. In addition, the inclusion of Pelophylax lesone in Appendix II is proposed as a lookalike species, satisfying criterion A in Annex 2B of Resolution Conf 924 Ref CoP17, as the species is native to range states of the aforementioned species and can only be accurately identified to species level by molecular methods, given that they are mostly traded as frogs' legs. Overexploitation for commercial export of frogs' legs for consumption is a considerable threat to these Pelophylax species, particularly in Albania and Turkey. The EU is one of the largest consumers of frogs' legs. According to EU import data, over 160 tons of frogs' legs are imported per year, equivalent to 3.2 to 8.1 million individuals from Pelophylax range states, with Turkey and Albania as key exporting countries. Recently, Pelophylax eperoticus was assessed as near-threatened and the range-restricted Pelophylax scipericus as vulnerable, both species with decreasing population trends according to IUCN Red List assessments in 2023. Overexploitation for use as a food source is contributing to population declines, with ongoing loss of habitat and reduction in habitat quality being additional threats. While Pelophylax redibundus was assessed as least concern by the IUCN in 2021, several subspecies, such as Pelophylax redibundus caralitanus, which is endemic to Turkey, were recently assessed as vulnerable with a decreasing population trend. In particular, populations were noted to have declined and become locally extinct in regions where frogs are extensively housed for commercial exports of frogs' legs. In conclusion, we propose that inclusion of Pelophylax eperoticus, redibundus, and scipericus in Appendix II is required to regulate international trade and to ensure that the harvest of specimens from the wild is not impacting the viability of wild populations to a level at which its survival might be threatened by continued harvesting in combination with other influences. We are confident that populations can be sustained if adaptive management of the species, including, for example, harvest quotas and size restrictions, is effectively applied. The inclusion of a fourth species in Appendix II is proposed with an 18-month implementation delay to allow trading parties time to develop any technical or enforcement measures required for the effective implementation of a listing. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. And now open the floor to parties. I see Ethiopia.
Thank you, Chair. Ethiopia welcomes Proposal 27 from the European Union, Israel, and North Macedonia. With this proposal, the European Union is taking responsibility as the largest consumer of frogs of the genus Pelophylax. Scientists from Turkey have highlighted an alarming decline in wild frogs population after decades of excessive exploitation and warned that certain Pelophylax population could disappear by 2030 if uncontrolled harvesting continues. Appendix II listing provides the necessary safeguards from unsustainable commercial exploitation to the wild population while allowing trade to continue under sustainable management. Therefore, Ethiopia is in full support of the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ethiopia. I now have Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monaco appuie cette inscription à l'annexe 2 avec le délai de 18 mois pour la mise en œuvre. Merci.
Thank you. Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous soutenons la proposition d'inscription des 4 espèces de Pelophylax à l'annexe 2. Une mesure justifiée par des données scientifiques montrant que la pression du commerce combinée à la dégradation des habitats accroît fortement les risques pour ces espèces. Nous saluons l'initiative de l'Union européenne qui cherche à prévenir une perte de la biodiversité évitable et assurer un commerce plus durable et transparent. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Cameroon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Cameroun souhaite exprimer son soutien à la proposition d'inscription des 4 espèces de Pelophylax à l'annexe 2. Cette inscription constitue une mesure forte venant de l'Union européenne pour prévenir la surexploitation de ces grenouilles dont elle est le principal importateur. Elle contribuera également à protéger ces espèces essentielles au bon fonctionnement des écosystèmes et nous saluons l'engagement des auteurs de la proposition et apprécions les éléments scientifiques qui l'accompagnent. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
I see Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe is in support of Proposal 27 for the inclusion of Pelophylax species in Appendix II is presented by European Union with Israel and North Macedonia. Thank you.
Thank you. Israel.
Thank you, Chair. As a co-proponent of this proposal, Israel strongly supports it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Armenia.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state for Pelophylax redibundus, Armenia supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. China.
China knows the genus Pelophylax is taxonomically unstable, and most of the species proposed are not even endangered species according to IUCN assessment. China resonates the Secretariat's assessment that there is no sufficient ground for the listing. China therefore opposes the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom appreciates the efforts of the proponents in bringing this proposal forward. While we recognise that the international trade in frogs' legs is substantial, there are information gaps that make it difficult to determine that these species meet the criteria for listing on Appendix II. There is an absence of population estimates for these species, which are required for determining whether trade levels are detrimental to wild populations. Pelophylax redibundus appears to be most heavily traded of the 4 species proposed, with concerns particularly centred around significant harvest pressure and population declines in Turkey. While these localised declines are of concern, they do not reflect the species' overall status. This species is deemed to be widely distributed, tolerant of a range of habitats, and common to abundant throughout its range. Species-specific trade is also lacking, and therefore the proportion of the frog leg trade attributable to these species remains unclear. We recognise the intention of this proposal to help ensure the sustainability of trade in these species to the EU. However, in the absence of population data and species-specific trade information, it is not possible to assess that the criteria for Appendix II listing have been met at this time, and therefore we oppose this proposal. We would encourage range states of these species to consider an Appendix III listing to gather further information on trade levels. Thank you.
Thank you. South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to express our support for this proposal.
An Appendix II listing would ensure that sustainability is regulated, ensuring long-term sustainable use of frog resources. It is the most suitable approach for ensuring a coordinated, regulated, and sustainable trade in these species. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Russian Federation.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Мы рассмотрели данный документ и отмечаем, что научных данных, обосновывающих необходимость включения Pelophylax lissonia по критерию схожести, недостаточно. Требуется дополнительное обоснование и исчерпывающая информация об угрозах данному виду и практической пользе его включения для контроля за торговлей. Спасибо.
Thank you. And I have Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the proposal and would like to commend the European Union, Israel, and North Macedonia for the work realized to bring this proposal forward. Canada recognizes that there are challenges in the possible enforcement of this proposal listing, given trade is not often identified at the species level. Therefore, in line with our guiding principle that CITES measures should be practical and enforceable, Canada would like to urge proponents to make sure tools are available and well disseminated to ensure the listing will achieve its intended effect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. And Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan highly appreciates the proposal. However, we have concerns about this proposal for the following reasons. Although this proposal addresses only 4 species, the genus Pelophylax contains many species distributed widely and prone to interspecific hybridization. In addition, identification of species is extremely difficult when only legs are available, which is the main form of utilization. This leads to concerns about the effectiveness of regulation. Furthermore, we believe that the handling of other species within the same genus requires further consideration, and current data and regulation arrangements appear insufficient. Therefore, we don't support the proposal at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I'm asking the interpreters if I can have a couple of minutes more, because I think we can get a conclusion here. Thank you very much. So having listened to the room, we have 4 parties who are opposing this proposal. So I think we will have to go for a vote. So that's what I would propose, and ask the EU if you are in agreement with this way forward.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we would like to go for a vote.
Okay, so we will go for a vote. Yes, Benna, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Non, je demandais la parole en fait pour soutenir cette proposition. Merci.
Okay. So this is a vote for proposal number 27 on 4 species of Pelophylax. It's to include them into Appendix II, with an entry into force would be delayed by 18 months. The voting type is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. Since this is a vote on a proposal for amendment of Appendix II, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. Technicians are ready, so parties, you have now 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. So technician, can you please display the results on the screen? So with 92 votes in favor of the proposal, 21 against, and 26 abstentions, proposal CoP20 Prop 27 to include 4 species of Pelophylax into Appendix II with a 18-month delay for implementation was accepted. So, can you please display the individual results on the screen? So thank you very much. Now I would give the floor to the Secretary for some housekeeping announcements.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of announcement, there are 3 working groups meeting today at 12:15. The first one is the Finance and Budget Working Group meeting 12:15 in Snow Leopard. Then the Working Group on Pau Brasilia Equinata meeting in room Euphorbia, which is the room we were in this morning. And finally, the Working Group on Trade in Threatened Endemic Species meets in Saiga room. These 3 groups meet at 12:15, therefore in about 10 minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and please be reminded that I will start with some records 8, 9, and 10, and COM3 in the afternoon. So have a good lunch. Thank you.